Hi guys, it's Rob from Royal Balls. Let's have a look at this maternal incubation girl, 2 weeks in now, and just give you guys an update on how we're doing. Okay guys, I'm going to have a go at a voiceover for this video here. I've included a shot right at the beginning of this female on a morning when I was inspecting her. There was a comment about her head looks deformed on the infrared camera, and you can see that she isn't actually. That's camera distortion from the motion sensitive camera, which is positioned just down by the side of the water bowl, just a few inches from her face, and that's probably what the distortion is. You can see that she is actually a perfectly normal ball python. The first portion of this video is speeded up 20 times, and you can see she's being extremely active, moving around an awful lot, but not actually giving us a good look at the eggs. She's keeping those quite nicely coiled. You'll see that she is still coiled anti-clockwise, and I have noticed that she takes a drink very regularly. At least once a day she's drinking. She is maintaining a temperature which is higher than ambient, and I suspect that that has something to do with her drinking a lot. Whatever metabolic process she's using to increase her body temperature, she needs water to do that, so she's drinking very regularly. and I have no clue what she's doing here with her head tucked inside her coils. She's very curious when I inspect her tub on a morning. You can see that this is 7:48 in the morning, and I'm just inspecting the tub, making sure she's got water. And I've slowed this portion of the video down to just 8 times, because in this portion of the video she moves around an incredible amount. She's giving us a really good look at the eggs, and you will notice that she changes her coil direction, and she actually moves around the eggs and ends up in a clockwise direction before then moving back into her, what must be her default anti-clockwise direction, which she seems to prefer. But you can see she's sitting on a nice big clutch of eggs there. I can see probably 7 eggs, maybe there's one tucked away behind as well that we can't see. So it looks like a clutch of somewhere between 6 and 8 eggs, and at this point they all look fantastic. And the vanilla clown has immediately bedded down and made a nest into that substrate. She's tipped it everywhere, including in the water bowl. We leave her to it. This female, on the other hand, is now underneath the container that I've given her as a nest, so I don't think that that's going to work. Here I've included some shots for you guys on my substrate experiment, just to show you what the snakes are actually doing with their substrates or with their hides that I put in. You can see the artificial nest. The female has no interest in using it, and in fact most of my snakes, when I put a hide into their tubs, wedge themselves into the space between the top of the tub and the hide. They don't actually go in the hide, they sit on top of it and wedge themselves in that tight space. Well, substrate with paper combined is not wanting to work, guys. This is going all over the place. The water bowl was absolutely full of stuff. She's burrowed down under every single layer of paper and just thrown all the substrate out onto the top. So she's buried right down underneath absolutely everything here. She's got as far underneath as she can, right down to the base of the tub, and basically just piled everything on top of her. So I'm going to have to remove the paper at least for this. There we go, guys. So no paper now, just the substrate, and there's quite a bit of it in there, but we'll see what she does now. Interestingly enough, she didn't bed down at the back of the tub with the newspaper in there. She seemed quite comfortable bedding down wherever the paper was on top of her. So we'll see what she does now with no paper on top, whether she moves to the back of the tub and builds a nest there. So we'll leave her to it, and I'll get back to you. And this girl here with a much simpler and cleaner approach, this upturned laundry basket. She doesn't want to be in it, she doesn't want to be on it, she doesn't want to be underneath it, she wants to be behind it, in that tight space there right at the back of the tub. That's where she feels most comfortable. So this artificial nest, completely ignored. This is a male here. You can see what he's done to his tub. Again, he doesn't want to be in it, he wants to be on top of it, wedged in between the tub and the roof of the tub, in there, in that nice tight space there. That's very common for ball pythons to do that. They'll wedge themselves in to the tightest space they possibly can. Another example here. This is the Savannah girl that laid, that I did have to pull the clutch, and she's been sitting on top of her hide in the same place, wedging herself in as tightly as she possibly can. Very common in my ball pythons. When I give them hides, they sit on top of the hide and wedge themselves in between the top of the tub and the hide. Not really what we envisaged, but they are using them just in the way that they want to use them, not in the way that we envisaged them using them. And my yellow belly desert ghost female, who is due to lay in the middle of October, is getting not exactly shredded newspaper, but it's cut up as fine as I can get it. I don't actually have a shredder. So she's on shredded newspaper. I've just put her in there, and we'll see how she goes there, making a nest in the shredded newspaper. I might just put a little bit more in just to make her more comfortable, and we'll see how she goes on shredded newspaper. What a great idea. So this is the girl that I put the shredded newspaper in yesterday, and when I put the newspaper in, she immediately dived underneath the paper that was on the floor of the tub and got underneath all of the substrate. You can see now that she's shoved it all over to this side and isn't actually using any of the substrate. So what I'm going to do is to remove that sheet of newspaper that she burrowed under and see whether I can get her to sit and make a nest in this shredded newspaper. It appears that they don't actually like the substrate very much. We saw the same thing from the girl when I put the cocoa husk in. She dived underneath the paper and I had to take the paper out in order to get her to use the cocoa husk. So let's take this paper out and just leave the shredded newspaper in there and see what this girl does. Okay, there we go. So I've taken the paper out and it's just the shredded newspaper in there now. It is a little bit damp, but she's got a couple of weeks to go, so that should dry out a little bit. I've got plenty of ventilation in here. So I'm just going to leave that and we'll see how she goes. So this is the default location for all my gravid females when they are getting close to laying eggs. You see they just go underneath the newspaper. And I've discovered that putting substrate in here makes no difference. They don't like to use it. They'll just dive underneath the paper anyway and get themselves right down to the bottom of the tub. This female is looking fantastic. This is my pastel inchy clown female. Really looking forward to this clutch. But we won't disturb her anymore. We're not going to give her substrate. We're going to leave her as she is there and let her lay her eggs underneath the newspaper. And this is the vanilla clown girl that I put cocoa husk in, and she immediately dived under the paper as well. And again, I had to take the paper out in order to get her to use the substrate. I actually had to force her to sit on the substrate so that she would make a nest. Otherwise she would just dive under the paper and sit on the floor of the tub and not use the substrate at all. She just avoided it. So this girl is now sitting on substrate, and yes, she has made a nest. So we're going to leave this one on this substrate until she lays her eggs. She's got a week or so left to go. But she doesn't look like she's coiled very comfortably there in that substrate. So I'm a little bit worried about what this girl is up to. It shouldn't stop her from laying her eggs, but she just doesn't look to be coiled as nicely as she did when she was laid on the floor of the tub with newspaper on top of her. So there we go. Let me just see if I can video this for you guys. So room temperature is 85. It's quite cool. It was cool last night. The outside walls are at 85. So let's just heat gun this maternal female, because I've noticed that she's able to hold her temperature much higher than ambient. So there she is in there, and let's just heat gun her. And she's at 86. She's at 86.5. Let's just do that again. 86.5. So she's a good 1.5 degrees above ambient temperature. Which I find absolutely fascinating. Okay, so she is maintaining a temperature higher than ambient, and it appears that she's drinking a lot of water in order to be able to do that. I don't know whether any of you watched Dave Kaufman's video, Ball Pythons in the Wild, where he actually caught a female sitting in the entrance to the burrow and not coiled around her eggs, and he speculated that that was to allow the eggs to actually cool off and to ventilate the eggs. But of course there was a lot of speculation that no, she was sunbathing to gain heat and bring heat back to the eggs. Well, the fact that this is the tropics and it's absolutely scorching hot and you could incubate eggs at room temperature anyway suggests to me that the last thing she needs to do is to bring heat back to these eggs. And in fact, she probably was allowing the eggs to ventilate, because I've noticed that my snake does the same thing. She will occasionally heave up her coils in a bellows-like motion and then squash back down again, which I can only assume is ventilating the eggs. It's sucking new air into that clutch of eggs and expelling the old air when she does that bellows type movement, and you can see that on some of the video. If you haven't caught it on this one, just go back and have a look at some of that video and slow it down. You will see her lifting up and squashing back down again in a bellows-like motion. So I suspect it is to do with ventilation, and not only that, but you can see that my snake would not need to bring heat back to her eggs because she's generating her own. She is sitting in a room at 85 Fahrenheit and she's maintaining her eggs at 86.5 or 87 Fahrenheit, and I suspect inside the coils it's even warmer still. So I do not believe that that behaviour was sunbathing to bring heat back to the eggs. These eggs would incubate all on their own without the female being there at all. But she can control her metabolism and she can produce her own heat without having to sunbathe and bring it back. Now, on this still photograph here, you will see that top egg has started to dimple a little bit and has a slightly yellowish tinge to it. And I'm becoming a little bit concerned. It's 2 weeks now since we started the incubation, and I noticed on top of this egg here was some free water, and it looks as if the female has actually been bringing water back to the eggs. So when she was actually coiled around the eggs and sticking her head inside the coils, I wonder whether she was actually bringing water back to the eggs to keep the humidity high, and there was actually some free water on top of this egg here. There's no smell. The egg is still fairly white with a yellowish tinge here, and I suspect that the female is modulating humidity in that clutch of eggs as well. She's coiled very, very tightly around them, which would tend to retain humidity, particularly if she brings water back and either regurgitates water or breathes into the space around the clutch, or even urinates on the eggs to some extent in order to keep them moist. I have seen that behaviour before in some maternal females, but the slightly yellowish tinge to this egg has me a little bit worried. The rest of the eggs look fine, but they are actually starting to dimple a little bit, and I wonder whether that's a humidity issue and this is her attempt to hydrate the eggs. So we're going to have to trust to nature here, guys. She knows what she's doing. She knows better than me. So as long as there is no musty smell, I will just leave everything exactly as it is. I'm not sure she'll let me interfere with the clutch anyway, so we'll see what happens. That's 2 weeks in. We have another 6 weeks to go. So if that egg is starting to go, it's got a long way to go and probably won't make it. But let's wait and see. I just noticed this morning when I took this photograph that that egg was slightly dimpled, did have free water in the dimples there, and had a slightly yellowish tinge to it. So watch out for that one. Okay guys, thanks for watching. Stick around for an update on the terrarium guy, because there's been some interesting new developments and some changes in behaviour from this guy. So we're going to be doing an update on him fairly shortly. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Don't forget to share, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.